And so my story starts with I was adopted when I was 8 months old from South Korea. My parents lived in southern Vermont at that time. And I quite honestly don't remember a lot from my childhood, but what I do remember is that my brother, when he was 2.5 years old, was adopted from Honduras.
Okay.
My parents were really, I don't want to say attracted to adopting him, but were wanted to support him because he was in a fire in Honduras, and he unfortunately had severe burn damage. And they wanted to be able to offer that support to him in the United States that he wasn't going to get in Honduras. That I share that because not to talk about necessarily his experience, but from an early age, the focus was primarily on him for the right reasons. He needed a lot of medical care and also had a lot of traumatic events from that fire and a lot of things to process. So. Again, I had a great childhood. I would always say that part of my parents tried the very best that they could. But, again, the focus was a lot on him when I was younger. Again, my parents did the best they could. But, I remember going to a lot of medical appointments with him. We used to go to Shriners Hospital because he was an amputee, so he had to have prosthetics to help him walk.
Wow.
And also, to deal with the burns on his body. So, again, they offered him a lot of support and help. But what that meant for me was that, in a lot of ways, I was left in the back seat.
Right.
Ben's okay. Ben gets enough love, which, again, a lot of parts are true. But the focus from when I was early in age to when I was a teenager was all on him. I remember going to support him through therapy sessions and everything else. And again, a lot of focus was diverted to, what he needed, which again, I don't discount and don't think was the wrong thing to do.
Do you think they felt like you can take care of yourself because you don't, not yourself at 2, 3, 4, but you can handle more since you didn't have all these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also one piece that I would add too is that, and my mom is in recovery today, but my mom was an active alcoholic. My grandparents were alcoholics. I don't know that they would call themselves alcoholics, but they certainly were. And when you look at it in today's settings, and my dad was also an alcoholic.
Okay.
So on top of working with my brother on the medical needs that he needed here, I also had two alcoholic parents for a very long time. Again, I don't want to quote the age, but I think around 13, because I just can't remember specifically. My mom was able to get sober. My dad, unfortunately, never was able to get there.
Got it. That's hard.
So yeah, very tumultuous household, for lack of a better term.
So how did that affect you growing up in terms of in the older years, like when you were going to school and everything? What did that look like for you?
So that's a great question. One of the things that I remember is going to work at a very young age. My parents were very giving with what they had. At times they didn't have a lot, but other times, they did. My grandfather started a chain of restaurants and was able to pass along some of that to my dad and to us, which was really helpful and supportive. But I guess in part of my own independence, I should say, because there was so much focus on my brother, that I was able to, start really living independently, meaning getting jobs during the summertime, really working a lot, trying to self-sustain to some extent. I am proud to say that when I was 16, I bought my first car.
That's amazing.
And again, I was in southern Vermont at the time, so I went to a smaller schools just because the population isn't as high as in South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So I did have a good group of friends around me. But yeah, I tended to do a lot of independent things, I guess I would put it that way.
Okay. Did you fit in well with the people around you? Was it being adopted? Did that affect you in any way in terms of, did you feel different?
So that's a great question too. So I didn't see that until probably later in life when I was able to process it on a more of a clinical and therapeutic level. But yeah, growing up in southern Vermont, I was probably the only Asian person in the school in the area. And I think also, from my brother being from Honduras and me being from South Korea, we were different
Right.
in a lot of ways. Did I ever not feel accepted? I really can't say that I did, for me personally. I feel like people were very accepting of me, and I never felt different. People actually would joke around when I was a kid that, you know, I looked Asian, but really had a very white childhood, for lack of a better term. And I don't mean that in any different way. It's just kind of the way that they kind of looked at my childhood and looked at the way that I learned things. You know.
Oh.